Welcome back to the Deep Dive. It is Tuesday, February 10th, 2026.
Hard to believe we're already this far into the new year.
It really is. And, if you have opened a newspaper, scrolled through your feed, or just walked past a newsstand any time in the last, 3 years, you know that the world is absolutely swimming in theories about artificial intelligence.
Swimming is a very polite way to put it. Drowning might be a little more accurate. We are just saturated.
Right. It feels like we are living in this soup of contradictory headlines.
Yeah.
I mean, on a Monday, you'll read an op-ed from some Silicon Valley founder just screaming that we are 5 minutes away from a computer god.
The God in a box scenario.
Exactly. A machine that, solves mortality, fixes the climate, breaks the laws of physics, ushers in a complete utopia.
That's the whole superintelligence camp. They see a vertical line on the graph of progress just going straight up forever.
But then on Tuesday, you'll read a report from a skeptic, someone saying, relax, everyone needs to calm down. It's just a really good autocomplete.
Yeah, the bubble is about to burst. The power requirements are unsustainable, and we're all going to look back on this like the tulip craze.
Or the dot-com crash, yeah. And then, just to make it more stressful, on Wednesday you have the geopolitical hawks. They aren't even debating the tech so much as the conflict itself.
Right. For them, it's a zero-sum race with China that's going to determine the fate of the entire century. And it doesn't really matter if the AI is godlike or just, pretty good. The race is the thing.
It is exhausting. And the problem is all these people are shouting past each other. It's just chaotic. It's noise. But today, we are going to try to cut through that. We are looking at a document that dropped just last month, January 2026, that I honestly think is going to be the gold standard for how we actually talk about this stuff.
I agree completely. It's a strategic paper titled Geopolitics in the Age of Artificial Intelligence, Strategy and Power in an Uncertain AI Future.
And it's written by Jake Sullivan and Tel Feldman.
A couple of real heavy hitters in the strategic policy world. And just to set the stakes here, this isn't just another tech blog post or some venture capital pitch deck. This is a very serious, dense piece of strategic thinking about how governments, specifically the U.S. government, should navigate this fog. It's really about statecraft.
And what I love about their approach right off the bat is they don't try to sell us a prediction. They don't come out and say, AI will definitely do X by 2030.
No, and that is the critical difference. They actually argue that the predictions are the problem. Or, more accurately, the confidence in our predictions is the problem. They basically say, look, the issue isn't that we don't have theories. The issue is that we have too many confident theories that completely contradict one another.
That is such a key insight, because if you're a policymaker or a CEO, or honestly just a person trying to figure out where to send your kid to college, you're paralyzed by this.
Exactly. And Sullivan and Feldman start by pointing out that these confident policy arguments, they almost always rest on hidden assumptions. Let's just play this out. If you believe AI is really racing towards superintelligence, that God in a box scenario, what do you want the government to do?
Well, if I genuinely believe that, I'd want them to treat it like a national emergency. I mean, spend trillions. Lock everything down. Put the military in charge of the data centers. You treat it like the Manhattan Project times 100.
Right. But what if you believe the other story? What if you believe AI is going to plateau, that it's useful, but it's bounded? It's just a better Excel spreadsheet that can also write your emails. If you spend trillions of taxpayer dollars building military bunkers for a spreadsheet.
That is a colossal, historic waste of money. You've bankrupted the country for nothing, and you've probably stifled all sorts of real innovation in the process.
Precisely. Now add the China dimension to that.
Yeah.
If you assume China is racing to beat us to the frontier, you act one way. You get aggressive, you block their access to chips, everything.
Right, you go on the offensive.
But if you assume China is just waiting to copy us, to be what they call a fast follower, you act a completely different way. You might focus way more on keeping your own secrets than on blocking their development.
And their warning is pretty stark. If you bet the entire national strategy on just one of those stories, and you turn out to be wrong,
you lose, and you lose big. Just imagine this. You assume catching up is hard. You think you have a moat around your tech because you have the best chips. So you don't bother defending your software secrets as much because you think, well, it doesn't matter if they have the code, they can't run it.
Okay, that seems logical.
But what if it turns out catching up is actually easy? What if they figure out a way to get the same results with less compute? You've just handed away the keys to the kingdom because of one bad assumption.
So the mission of this deep dive, then, isn't to tell you what will happen. We are not doing predictions today.
No crystal balls allowed. We are officially retiring the crystal ball for this one.
Instead, we are going to walk you through the framework that Sullivan and Feldman built. It's a tool. It's a tool to help us make choices when we don't know the future. And they break it down into what they call the three axes of uncertainty, which creates, and I just love this concept, 8 possible worlds.
It sounds like something out of a sci-fi novel, a multiverse theory, but it's actually a really rigorous way to stress test your strategy. It forces you to ask, okay, does my plan work in World 1? What about in World 8? What if I'm wrong about everything?
Okay, so let's unpack this. We're going to be your instructors today. We're going to build this 3D matrix step by step for you. So just imagine a cube in your head. To get our 8 worlds, our 8 corners of the cube, we need to ask 3 specific questions. Let's start with axis number 1.
Axis 1 is the nature of AI progress.
Which is really the big philosophical question, right? Is this thing going to keep getting smarter forever, or does it eventually hit a wall?
That's essentially it. On one side of this axis, you have superintelligence. This is the view that AI is going to undergo a singular break with history. It doesn't just get faster or better, it gets fundamentally different.
This is the singularity stuff we hear about all the time.
It is. And the core concept here, the technical term they use, is recursive self-improvement.
Okay, can you break that down for us? That sounds like a technical mouthful.
Sure. Right now, humans write the code that makes AI better. A team of brilliant engineers at a lab sits down and figures out how to improve the algorithm. But in a superintelligence scenario, the AI gets smart enough to write its own code. It can look at its own architecture, identify its own flaws, and then fix them.
And then that improved version of itself improves itself again.
Exactly. And since computers think at the speed of light, or close enough, this cycle of self-improvement happens faster and faster and faster.
So it goes from being as smart as a human to as smart as 1,000 humans to something we can't even comprehend, in maybe a matter of weeks or days or even hours.
Right. It's an exponential curve that basically goes vertical. That's the takeoff.
So in this world, the AI is inventing new physics. It could solve climate change overnight by designing new materials we couldn't conceive of. Or, on the flip side, it could end the world if we don't control it.
Precisely. The capabilities become completely unmoored from human limitations. And strategically, if we are on this side of the axis, being first is everything. It is the only thing that matters.
And why is being first so absolutely critical?
Because once that takeoff happens, the leader just disappears into the distance. If the US AI invents the next generation of technology in 1 hour, China can never, ever catch up. A narrow 6-month lead becomes a permanent, decisive global dominance.
Okay, that is one side. That's the high-stakes sci-fi movie scenario. What's on the other side of axis 1?
The authors call this bounded and jagged intelligence.
Jagged is such an evocative word for a piece of software. It implies it's, sharp in some places and really dull in others.
It's a perfect description of what we are actually seeing in 2026, to be honest. In this scenario, AI is still amazing. I mean, it might boost global GDP by trillions of dollars. It helps with scientific discovery. It writes code. But it is bounded, meaning the progress isn't infinite. It hits a ceiling. It does not become a god.
It's a tool, not a new species.
A very, very powerful tool, but a tool nonetheless. And it's jagged because its capabilities are uneven. Just think about it. An AI might be superhuman at coding in Python or solving complex protein folding structures, things that are very logical and data heavy.
Right.
But that very same AI might struggle with basic common sense judgment or true creativity or, physical tasks.
Kind of like the classic example of trying to get a robot to fold the laundry.
Exactly. We have these large language models that can write sonnets in the style of Shakespeare, but you can't build a robot that can reliably clear a dishwasher without breaking a plate. That is jagged intelligence. It's brilliant in these narrow, deep valleys, but kind of stupid on the broad, common sense hills.
Which implies a totally different national strategy.
100%. If we are in a bounded world, these moonshots to build a superbrain, they don't really make sense because the superbrain isn't even possible. Instead, the game becomes about broad adoption.
Not who builds the biggest, but who uses it best.
That's it. It's about getting the tech into every business, every hospital, every school. It becomes an economic integration challenge, not a race for a single scientific discovery.
Okay, so that's axis 1, super god versus a really, really useful tool. Now let's move to axis 2. This one feels a bit more technical on the surface, but I get the sense it might actually be the most important one for geopolitics.
I would argue it is. Axis 2 is the ease of catching up, or, as the authors sometimes put it, the fast follow problem.
So in plain English, if I invent the next cool AI, how hard is it for you to steal it or copy it?
That's basically it. On one end of the spectrum you have, catching up is easy.
What makes it easy? Is it just, bad passwords and spies?
It's deeper than that, though that's part of it. It's about the nature of the technology itself. First, yes, classic espionage. Digital secrets are notoriously hard to keep. But more specifically, it comes down to something called model weights.
We hear that term thrown around a lot. What are model weights, really?
The simplest way to think of them is as the learned parameters of the AI. After you've spent $1 billion training it on all the data, the model weights are the final file that contains everything the AI knows. It's just a big file of numbers. And if the secret sauce of AI is just that one file, then once that file gets out, whether it's hacked, stolen, or just leaked on a torrent site, the game is over.
It's kind of like a song. Once the MP3 is on the internet, you can't put it back in the bottle. You can't really charge for it in the same way anymore.
That's a perfect analogy. And there's another technical concept that makes catching up even easier in this world, and it's called model distillation.
Okay, walk us through that one.
So imagine you're the US. You spend $1 billion training a massive genius-level AI. You have the supermodel. I'm your rival, and I don't have $1 billion. I only have a fraction of that. But I can access your model through its public API. I can just ask it 10 million questions.
You treat it like a teacher. You just sit there and quiz it all day.
Exactly. I ask it, how do you write this piece of code? Explain the scientific concept. Translate this document. I take all of your model's perfect answers and I use them as the training data for my smaller, cheaper model. My model learns to mimic yours. I didn't do the hard work. I didn't spend the $1 billion on the initial training, but I might get 95% of the performance for 1% of the cost.
So I just bet the GDP of a small nation on R&D, and you spend a few million bucks, and we basically ended up in the same place.
That is the easy catch-up world. And it's a world where being the first mover is actually a huge disadvantage because you're paying for all the basic research and development that everyone else then gets to use for free.
That's got to be incredibly frustrating for the innovator. So what's the other end of this axis?
Catching up is hard. This is the moat theory, the idea that you can build a defensible lead.
But how do you build a moat around digital code? It feels so intangible.
You do it by assuming the secret sauce isn't just that file of code, it's the full stack. It's everything. It's having proprietary hardware, custom chips that no one else has access to. It's having massive data centers that consume the energy of a small country. That's physical infrastructure you can't just steal on a USB drive.
Right. You can steal the blueprints for a nuclear reactor, but that doesn't mean you can build one in your basement tomorrow. You still need the concrete, the uranium, the cooling towers, the trained personnel.
Exactly. And that personnel part is key. This also includes what the authors call institutional secrets, the human talent. Maybe the real magic isn't in the model weights, but in the specific 500 engineers who know how to tune the system or how to curate the training data just right. You can't steal a company's culture or a decade of shared experience.
So if catching up is hard, the strategy is all about defense.
Yes. Defend the lead, lock the doors, fortify the moat. If catching up is hard, you can potentially maintain a decade-long advantage. But if catching up is easy, defense is basically pointless. You have to pivot your entire strategy to spreading your tech faster than the other guy, what the authors call diffusion.
Got it. Okay. So axis 1, how smart is it? Axis 2, how easy is it to copy? That brings us to axis 3. And this is the elephant in the room.
China's strategy.
Now, the authors make a point to say that, other competitors could emerge down the line, Europe, India, maybe a rogue state actor. But right now, in early 2026, China is the main player.
Correct. They are the peer competitor. The uncertainty here isn't about whether China wants to be powerful. Of course they do. It's about their specific tactical choice right now. So option A on this axis is China is racing.
And this is pretty much the standard assumption in Washington, right?
It's the default, yes. It assumes they are all in. They are funding massive training runs. They're building competing labs. They're trying to seize every GPU they can get their hands on, all in an effort to reach the frontier before the U.S. does. They want to be first.
This is the classic Cold War-style standoff. Two runners sprinting for the exact same finish line.
It is. But option B is fascinating, and I think it's often overlooked. Option B is China is not racing.
Now, we need to be really clear here. Not racing does not mean they are doing nothing. It doesn't mean they've given up on AI.
No, Absolutely not. That would be a huge misreading. It means they might have looked at the whole landscape. Maybe they looked at the crushing cost of cutting-edge chips or their own economic slowdown and decided, you know what? We can't win the race to the absolute frontier. It's too expensive, too risky, so we are going to prioritize adoption and application instead.
They intentionally decide to be the fast follower.
Exactly. Let America burn trillions of dollars inventing the iPhone, and we'll make the Huawei that costs half as much and sells to the entire developing world.
It's a very smart economic play. It's risky because you might fall behind, but it's incredibly efficient if it works.
It is. And Sullivan and Feldman point out that in this scenario, China might occasionally release a big, flashy model just to signal they are still in the game, a kind of prestige project to spook Washington. But their real money, their real focus, is on industrial application. They want to put AI in robots, in factories, in their surveillance systems.
So there we have it, our three axes. 1, superintelligence versus bounded. 2, hard catch-up versus easy catch-up. 3, China racing versus China not racing.
And if you mix and match all of those 2 times 2 times 2, you get your 8 different possible worlds.
And we are going to visit all of them. It's going to be a journey. But before we jump into World 1, I want to pause, because the authors do something really smart here. Before they tell us about the scenarios, they take a step back and look at the toolkit.
Right. It's a reality check. Because regardless of which of these 8 worlds we land in, the U.S. government only has certain levers it can actually pull. And it's so important to remember, the U.S. government doesn't own OpenAI. It doesn't own Google or Anthropic or Microsoft.
It's not like the old Soviet Union where the state just orders the scientists to go build a rocket and they do it.
That's a critical distinction. The U.S. system is decentralized. It relies on the private sector. So if the White House wants to steer this massive ship, how does it actually do it? The authors list a few key sources of power. First, there are implicit subsidies and signaling.
Signaling sounds a little vague. Does a press release from the White House actually change anything on the ground?
It's surprisingly powerful. When the White House or a key senator says AI is a national security priority, or we are looking at these particular safety standards, that signals to every venture capitalist on Sand Hill Road where the wind is blowing.
It tells them where the safe money is, where the government contracts might be in the future.
Exactly. If they know the government supports a certain type of development or is planning to buy a certain type of technology, they will pour money into startups in that space because they anticipate favorable rules. It de-risks their investment. So it's a way of steering billions of dollars of private capital without spending a single dime of direct tax money.
And on the flip side of that, things like export controls on chips, they act as implicit subsidies for U.S. firms.
Right. If I make it illegal for China to buy the best chips from NVIDIA, I am artificially handicapping the competition for U.S.-based AI companies. That is a huge form of support. It clears the field for them.
Then, of course, there's the direct stuff, actual money.
R&D tax credits, infrastructure investment in things like power grids, federal grants, and crucially, something called federal procurement.
Which is just the government simply buying the stuff.
And buying it at scale. When the Pentagon or the Department of Energy says, we will buy this AI-powered system, that creates a guaranteed market. It creates a revenue floor for the industry. It sends a message. Even if the consumer market for this crashes, we will be here to buy it.
Okay, so they also list what they call 4 pillars of power. These are core elements the U.S. needs to have in its toolkit in almost any of these 8 scenarios. I want to run through these because they keep coming up again and again in the different worlds.
Absolutely. The first and most foundational is compute. This is the bedrock. It's the chips, it's the data centers, and this is getting so much more attention in 2026. It is energy.
The power bill for the whole operation.
A massive power bill. If you cannot power the data center, you cannot train the model. It's that simple. We were talking about gigawatts of power, enough to power entire cities. So the U.S. needs massive amounts of clean, reliable energy, nuclear, maybe fusion eventually, renewables, just to keep the computers on. It turns out the biggest constraint on AI in the long run might not be code, but electricity.
Wow. Okay, what's pillar number 2?
The industrial scientific base. The idea here is you can't just have code. You need robotics to turn that digital intelligence into physical capacity. You need advanced manufacturing.
Right, the idea we can't just be the brain and let someone else be the body of the global economy.
Precisely. If your AI designs a revolutionary new engine, you need a factory that can actually build it. If you lose the capacity to make physical things, then the intelligence just becomes abstract and you lose the economic benefits.
Okay, what's third?
Risk management. Now, usually Silicon Valley thinks of safety as a break. You're slowing us down. Let us innovate.
Move fast and break things.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the authors make a really compelling argument that safety is actually a source of stability and long-term speed. If the industry keeps having catastrophic accidents or massive data leaks or creating models that go off the rails, it will collapse, either from internal failure or because the public will demand it be regulated into oblivion.
So safety allows you to go fast sustainably.
That's it. It's like the brakes on a race car. You can only drive 200 miles per hour because you know for a fact you can stop. Without the brakes, you'd have to crawl.
And the fourth and final pillar.
Diffusion. This is the global battleground for influence, whose values are going to define the digital world order. If the whole world, Africa, South America, Southeast Asia, runs on Chinese-built AI stacks, then the world plays by Chinese rules on censorship, surveillance, and data.
It's soft power.
It's the ultimate soft power. The U.S. needs to prove it can export its technology effectively. It's about offering an alternative.
Okay. We have our axes, we have our toolkit. Now let's finally enter the multiverse.
Let's do it.
We're going to start with the high-stakes side of the matrix.
Mm-hmm.
These are the superintelligence worlds. So in all four of these first scenarios, we have to assume that the Godbot is possible. The technology is going to fundamentally change human history.
Right. So the stakes here are completely existential. We're not just talking about GDP growth. We are talking about the survival of the human species or the permanent dominance of a single nation forever.
So, World 1. The authors call this the arms race. Let's just lay out the conditions for this world. Superintelligence is real. Catch-up is hard. The mode exists. And China is racing.
This is the scenario that keeps national security advisors awake at night. It looks and feels like the Cold War space race, but compressed into a few years and with much, much higher stakes.
Because if superintelligence involves that recursive self-improvement we talked about earlier, the winner takes literally everything, right?
That is the terrifying logic of this world. If I get there first, my AI invents the next even better version of AI before you've even had your morning coffee. The lead becomes self-reinforcing and grows exponentially. You can never, ever catch me.
So what does U.S. strategy look like in World 1? What do you do?
Manhattan Project 2.0. The authors are very clear here. This would require the mobilization of public resources on a scale we haven't seen since World War II. We're talking about possibly using the Defense Production Act to seize control of GPU supplies.
Whoa, so the government could literally tell NVIDIA, sorry, you aren't selling to Microsoft or Amazon today. All your chips are going to the NSA.
Potentially. It implies the government has to step in to direct the traffic, to prioritize the national mission over corporate profits, and it forces a really, really tough choice. Centralization versus competition.
What's the trade-off there?
Do you bet on one single secure government project like the original Manhattan Project in order to keep the secrets as tight as possible? Or do you let OpenAI, Google, Anthropic, and everyone else compete like crazy, hoping that the chaos and competition breeds speed, even if it's leaky?
And the security around this project would have to be insane.
Maximum security. If catching up is hard, that means your secrets are your lifeblood. So you are locking down your model weights like they are the nuclear launch codes.
Yeah.
Tightest possible export controls on everything. You are physically hardening your data centers against sabotage. You are screening every single researcher who comes near the project.
And what about diplomacy? In a world like that, do we just stop talking to China completely?
Paradoxically, you might end up talking to them more, but about one very specific, very scary thing: avoiding the end of the world. The authors suggest you'd have to pursue some kind of mutual restraint agreement.
Which is basically what
It's a conversation that goes, hey, neither of us wants an AI accident that could wipe out humanity, so let's at least agree on some basic safety brakes we both promise to install.
But the trust level there would be low.
Non-existent. It's a classic prisoner's dilemma. Both sides would be constantly tempted to cheat to get that decisive advantage. It's a very dangerous, unstable world because the incentive to strike first digitally or even physically is terrifyingly high.
Okay, that is the most stressful world. Let's move on to World 2. We're still in the superintelligence paradigm. The conditions are, superintelligence is real, catch-up is hard. But the big change here, China is not racing.
The authors call this one the unipolar moment.
This sounds a lot simpler. The U.S. wins. China has decided not to try and beat us to the peak. We stand alone on the mountaintop.
It is simpler for U.S. strategists, yes, but it's psychologically a very strange and difficult position for the rest of the world. Imagine one country having a complete monopoly on godlike intelligence.
Yeah, that's not going to make us very popular, is it?
It's a challenge far greater than in 1945 with the nuclear bomb. The U.S. has to prove to the entire planet that it is leading for the public good, not just for American dominance. If we hoard the benefits, if we use this super AI just to make ourselves rich while everyone else stagnates, the geopolitical backlash will be severe. Countries will form coalitions against us out of pure fear.
So we have to become the benevolent God.
Effectively, yes.
Hmm.
We have to show we are using this power to solve cancer for everyone, not just for Americans, to solve climate change for the world, not just for our coastlines. And we also have to make sure China doesn't sneak in the back door.
What do you mean?
Even if China isn't racing for the frontier AI, they might be very aggressive in trying to buy the intellectual property of failing U.S. companies.
Ah, so a U.S. AI startup that's number 3 or 4 in the race fails, and a Chinese firm swoops in to buy all their assets and research on the cheap.
Exactly. The U.S. would have to block those kinds of acquisitions. But the main challenge in World 2 is actually internal. If this AI produces trillions upon trillions of dollars of new wealth, how do you distribute that within your own country? We would have to channel those massive gains into prosperity for everyone, or else the country could tear itself apart from historic levels of inequality.
Okay, now let's flip the switch on that second axis. This is where things get really messy and unpredictable. World 3, the conditions are. World 3, the conditions are. Superintelligence is real. World 3, the conditions are. China is racing. World 3, the conditions are.
But catch-up is easy.
This is all-out proliferation. This is a world of pure chaos.
Because easy catch-up means there are no secrets. The moat is gone. Exactly. The moat is completely dry. Leaks happen constantly. Spies steal the model weights. Or just some bright kids in a basement in a third country manage to reverse engineer the latest breakthrough using that distillation technique we talked about.
So a big centralized national champion company or government project doesn't work here at all.
No, it's a terrible strategy in this world. If you pour billions into a secret Manhattan project, the results just get leaked online next Tuesday. A single national champion is doomed to fail because secrets simply don't stay secret. You can't put a fence around the wind.
And this is so dangerous
But
because...
it's not just China that gets the tech. It's North Korea, it's Iran, it's terrorist groups, it's some nihilistic cult on 4chan. If superintelligence is real, if it can design bioweapons or hack global banking systems and everyone has access to it.
It's an absolute nightmare. It is the democratization of weapons of mass destruction.
Yeah.
So what is the strategy? How do you even survive in a world like that?
Yeah, resilience. You have to give up on trying to prevent the fire from spreading, the fire being the diffusion of the tech, and you start building fireproof houses.
So what does that look like in practice?
It means better cyber defense for every hospital, every power grid, every bank. It means much better biosecurity to detect engineered pathogens at the border. It means stronger physical infrastructure. You have to assume the bad guys will get the powerful tools, so you harden society to withstand the inevitable attacks.
And you have to engage in what they call defensive racing.
Right. You have to keep racing to invent the next defensive technology just to keep up with the offensive threats that you yourself created and that leaked out. But interestingly, in this world, business innovation becomes more valuable than fundamental AI innovation.
What do you mean by that?
If the AI models themselves become commodities, if everyone has the same basic brain because it's been leaked or copied, then the value isn't in having the brain. It's in how you use it. Who builds the best business around the AI?
Ah, right. If everyone has access to the same engine, the winner is the one who builds the best car around it.
Exactly. And diplomatically, this world is so scary that it might actually force some real U.S.-China cooperation. Not because we suddenly like each other, but because we are both absolutely terrified of non-state actors, terrorists, getting their hands on this tech and causing global chaos.
The enemy of my enemy is a rogue AI loose in the wild strategy. Okay, let's do the last superintelligence world. World 4. Superintelligence is real, catch-up is easy, but China is not racing.
The authors call this one the fleeting window.
Why fleeting? What does that mean?
Because the U.S. might get to superintelligence first, but because catch-up is so easy, that late evaporates almost instantly. It's a unipolar moment that lasts for about 5 minutes before the technology proliferates everywhere.
So don't get comfortable?
Right. The strategy is to use that incredibly short window of advantage to build up your defenses as quickly as possible. But there is a very specific, subtle trap in World 4. Since China isn't racing for the brain, what do you think they're focusing on?
The body. The robotics thing again.
Yes. This is a very subtle but very real danger. Beijing could position itself to commoditize the American breakthroughs. We invent the superbrain, the model gets leaked or copied, and China immediately puts it into a billion cheap robots and floods the global market with them,
So we become the world's R&D lab, and they become the world's factory and sales floor.
which is a very dangerous place to be economically. You do all the hard, expensive work of invention, and they capture all the profit from manufacturing and sales. The U.S. response in this world must be to invest heavily in our own robotics and advanced manufacturing. We have to ensure we aren't just the software provider while China owns the entire physical world.
Okay. That is the entire superintelligence half of the matrix.
Yeah.
I feel like I need to take a breath. Those four worlds are incredibly intense.
They are. They're very high-stress environments. They deal with the fundamental restructuring of human history.
So let's shift gears. Let's bring the temperature down a little. Let's assume the hype is wrong. Let's assume we are in the bounded and jagged worlds. AI is great, it's powerful, it's economically transformative, but it hits a ceiling. It does not rewrite the laws of physics.
This takes the existential end-of-the-world pressure off the table, but it dramatically ramps up the traditional economic and geopolitical pressure. It becomes a much more familiar story about money, trade, market share, and setting global standards.
So World 5, the conditions are bounded AI, catch up is hard, and China is racing.
The authors call this the grinding innovation race.
This one feels kind of like normal life, or at least the last few decades.
It's very much traditional great power competition. It's the U.S.-Soviet Cold War or the U.S.-Japan trade wars of the 1980s, but with algorithms and data centers. The stakes are very high economic dominance, military edge, but not humanity ends high.
So what's the strategic move in this world?
Long-term patient industrial policy. You don't need a frantic, panicked Manhattan Project. You need steady, durable investment in research, talent, and infrastructure year after year. But there's a specific risk in this world: the market itself.
What do you mean by that?
If it becomes clear that AI is going to be bounded, not godlike, investors might panic. They've priced in God. They've poured trillions of dollars into companies like NVIDIA and Microsoft because they were expecting a singularity. If what they get is just a really good spreadsheet assistant, the bubble might burst. Capital could flee the sector.
The dreaded AI winter we hear about.
Exactly. So the government's role here is to be the steady hand, to keep supporting the industry even if Wall Street gets bored and moves on to the next shiny thing. You have to keep funding the research because the geopolitical competition with China hasn't stopped, even if the public hype has died down.
And the other big battleground in this world is diffusion.
Yes, absolutely critical. You need to get U.S. systems into wide use across the world early to build dependency and set standards before Chinese alternatives arrive. It's a global race for market share. You want Germany, Brazil, and India all using American AI standards, not Chinese ones.
Got it. Okay, now, World 6. Bounded AI, catch up is hard, and China is not racing.
This is the comfortable lead. And honestly, this is probably the best case scenario for American quality of life.
Why is that?
Because all the external pressure is off, we have the technological lead, because catch-up is hard. China isn't trying to dethrone us, and the technology itself isn't going to accidentally kill us all.
So we can actually take a breath and focus on fixing our own problems.
Exactly. We can stop stressing about winning the race every single day and start thinking about using the tool. Use AI to fix education. Use it to solve healthcare costs. Use it to revitalize lagging industries in the Rust Belt. It's a genuine moment for a U.S. revitalization.
And what's China doing in this world?
In this world, China has effectively exited the frontier race. They're focusing on domestic applications. So the U.S. doesn't need to stress about spreading its tech instantly just to block China. We can afford to focus on spreading safe, democratic, and well-regulated tech. We can take our time and actually get it right.
That sounds lovely. I'm officially voting for World 6.
Unfortunately, we don't get to vote. We just have to navigate the world we're given.
Right. Okay, moving on to World 7. Bounded AI. Catch-up is easy, and China is racing.
The diffusion race. This is an all-out sprint to commercialize and sell your tech around the globe.
It sounds like Glengarry Glen Ross, but for geopolitics. Always be closing.
That's not a bad way to put it. Since catch-up is easy, there are no moats. No one can keep a technological lead for long. And private capital hates this world. Venture capitalists despise it because there's no defensible profit.
Why would you invest billions in R&D if your product is just going to be copied instantly?
Exactly. So the U.S. government has to step in and play a much more active role. Statecraft becomes salesmanship. The authors specifically talk about the Development Finance Corporation.
That's the government agency that funds infrastructure projects abroad, right?
Yes. In World 7, that agency needs to be on overdrive, funding data centers in Africa, fiber optic networks in Southeast Asia. We need to be out there competing directly with China's bundled financing and infrastructure deals. If we don't, the world's digital infrastructure gets built by Beijing by default.
And the authors suggest something that sounds pretty radical here: open source.
This is a key pivot, and it's fascinating. The logic is, if secrets are impossible to keep anyway because catch-up is so easy, then don't even try. Instead, open source your safe, American-developed models. Flood the zone. Make sure the world runs on American open platforms rather than letting closed-off Chinese models take over.
So if you can't sell it, give it away, just so they use your standard and not your rivals.
Exactly. It's a kind of scorched earth policy for winning market share. And in this world, export controls are almost completely useless. In fact, they probably hurt you because they just slow down your own company's global expansion while China copies you anyway.
And finally, that brings us to World 8. Bounded AI. Catch-up is easy, and China is not racing.
The standard tech world.
This is the world where AI becomes just another utility.
Like 5G, like the internet, like electricity. It's incredibly important, it's integrated into everything, but it's normal. The sense of a national security emergency completely vanishes.
So the strategy is just normal business.
Pretty much. The public spending rationale drops off a cliff. Open source models likely dominate the market. And the main goal is just to ensure that trusted American and allied systems become the default infrastructure of the global economy. It's a standards war, like the old Betamax versus VHS, not a Cold War. It's all about interoperability, reliability, and efficiency.
Wow. Okay. Those are the 8 worlds. I think I want to just recap them very quickly because that was a ton of information. 1, arms race, high stakes, total lockdown, a new Manhattan Project. 2, unipolar moment. The U.S. stands alone at the top, but has to be a benevolent leader.
Chaos. You can't stop the leaks, so you build fireproof houses. 4, fleeting window. You get a brief lead, you use it to build defenses, and you watch out for China's robotics play. 5, grinding innovation, a traditional long-term trade war with China. 6, comfortable lead, the golden age. The pressure's off, you fix domestic problems. 7, diffusion race, a global sales pitch where you open source everything to win. 8, standard tech. AI becomes a normal utility and it's business as usual.
That is a remarkably comprehensive map, but I can hear the listener asking, okay, this is a great seminar, but what does a policymaker in the White House actually do with this list? Because they just pick one and hope they're right.
That is the so what question, and Sullivan and Feldman are very specific about this. You absolutely do not pick one. You use what they call probabilistic thinking.
And what does that mean in practice?
It's basically a 4-step process. Step 1, select a base case. You have to look at all the evidence available today in February 2026. Which of these 8 worlds do you think is the most likely right now?
Okay, if I had to guess right now, I'd say we are somewhere between World 1 and World 5. It feels like catch-up is hard right now. Those advanced chips are really hard to get, and China definitely seems to be racing. The big unknown for me is the superintelligence part.
Right, so you pick that as your working theory, your base case. Then you move to step 2. Stress test. You take your preferred policy, let's say it's implement strict export controls on everything. Then you ask, does that policy still work if we are actually in World 7 where catch-up is easy?
No, we just discussed that. In World 7, strict controls are a terrible idea and actually hurt us.
Exactly. So you have to identify the risks of your policy being wrong. You have to ask, what if I'm betting on the wrong horse here? How badly does this blow up in my face? Then you go to step 3, hedge. You have to prepare for the worst case scenarios, like World 1. Even if you don't think they are the most likely, you need to buy some insurance policies.
And step 4 is agility.
This is absolutely crucial. The National Security Council and the intelligence community need to become obsessive about tracking signals from the real world.
Signals like what? Give me an example.
Is China suddenly speeding up its investment in frontier models? That's a signal they're racing. Did a major company's model weights just get leaked online? That's a huge signal that we might be moving towards easy catch-up. Did an AI just solve cold fusion? That's a pretty strong signal for superintelligence.
Yeah.
You have to constantly be updating your probabilities and be willing to move your strategy across the matrix.
It's like a car's GPS constantly rerouting as traffic conditions change. You don't just set the course once at the beginning of the trip and then go to sleep.
That's the perfect analogy.
You know, I really like how the authors frame this as a tool for public debate, too. not just for people in the Situation Room.
Yes, this might be my favorite part of the whole paper. They argue that when people argue about AI policy, they're usually just talking past each other.
Give me an example of that.
Okay, so imagine person A is on social media saying, we must open source everything, we have to democratize AI, stop the corporate gatekeepers. And person B replies, are you completely crazy? We need to lock this technology down in a secure government bunker. It's an existential threat.
That is the classic Twitter argument, happens 1,000 times a day.
Right. But what's really happening? Person A is implicitly assuming we were in World 8. Standard tech, easy catch-up. In their head, the tech is basically safe and everyone is going to get it anyway, so we might as well share it. Person B is implicitly assuming we are in World 1, superintelligence, hard catch-up. In their head, the tech is unbelievably dangerous and it must be controlled.
So they're not even disagreeing on values, really. They're disagreeing on which world they think they live in.
Exactly. They're having two different conversations.
So if they use this matrix, they could actually have productive debate. They could say, oh, I see. You think ketchup is hard and the tech is godlike. I think it's easy and it's bounded. Let's debate that assumption first.
Precisely. It disciplines the strategy. It forces you to name your priors and stops us from just fighting ghosts.
And they say the matrix isn't static, right? It can evolve.
No, and they're clear about that. This is a simplified model for 2026. New axes could appear over time. For example, if we do actually reap superintelligence, a whole new axis might open up. Beneficial superintelligence versus dangerous superintelligence.
Oh, great. So a whole new 8-sided cube of anxiety to worry about.
Or hope. But the point is, the framework itself can adapt. It's a living document for strategic thinking.
So to wrap this up, we've journeyed from just 3 core questions about progress, ketchup, and China through 8 distinct worlds, ranging from a desperate Manhattan Project 2.0 all the way to a global sales pitch.
It's a truly comprehensive map of the strategic territory.
So for you, the listener, whether you are an investor, a coder, a policy wonk, or just a citizen trying to figure out why your newsfeed is so confusing all the time, I want you to ask yourself, which of these worlds do I think we are in right now?
And maybe more importantly, what piece of evidence could come out tomorrow that would change your mind?
Exactly. Now, before we go, I do want to leave you with one final thought. The authors, Sullivan and Feldman, they write that U.S. leaders must learn to think this way, to define the AI age. And the core assumption in the whole paper is that with the right strategy, the U.S. is, or can be, in the driver's seat.
That's the premise of all geopolitical strategy, really. That we can steer the ship of state.
But there's a twist here that really stuck with me. In several of these worlds, especially the easy catch-up ones or the really chaotic superintelligence ones, the technology itself might be so slippery or so powerful that no government can truly steer it.
That's the darker implication hiding beneath the surface.
We are spending all this time building a navigation system for a car, but we might actually be building a rocket. And rockets don't really have steering wheels. Are we spending all this time planning for a driver's seat that might not actually exist?
That is the ultimate uncertainty, isn't it?
It is. Something
Yeah.
to think about. A huge thank you for breaking all of this down with me.
My pleasure. It is a fascinating, if slightly terrifying, time to be alive.
It certainly is. Thanks for listening. We'll see you in the next deep dive.